There is a place in the Atacama Desert in Chile where rain has not fallen for decades. The soil is so dry, so stripped of moisture, that scientists once described it as the closest thing on Earth to the surface of Mars. Nothing should grow there. Nothing should bloom there. And for years at a stretch, nothing does. But then, once in a rare while, a thin rain comes. And within days, the desert floor erupts. Millions of flowers, stretching as far as the eye can see, covering cracked earth in waves of violet and gold and white. A desert that looked completely dead just weeks before becomes one of the most spectacular flowering events on the planet. This is not a miracle. It is not an accident. It is a strategy. Survival encoded into petals. Resilience written in pollen and root and seed. Across the harshest places on Earth, from frozen mountain peaks to volcanic craters, from salt flats to scorching sand dunes, flowers have found a way to bloom, not in spite of the conditions, but sometimes because of them. Today, we are going to meet the flowers that refuse to accept the limits of their environment, the ones that cracked rock, endured drought, survived ice, and bloomed where nothing was supposed to bloom. And by the time we reach the last one, you may find yourself looking at the next flower you see in an entirely different way. If the natural world has ever left you speechless, this video is for you. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. The journey starts right now. We tend to think of flowers as fragile things. Soft petals, delicate stems, things that wilt at the first sign of cold or dry air. And for many flowers, that is true. But scattered across the world, there are species that have evolved over millions of years to do the opposite. To push through rock, to store water for decades, to lie dormant beneath snow and ice, waiting with a kind of patience we can barely imagine. These are not just beautiful plants. They are engineering marvels shaped by time and pressure and survival. Today, we are visiting 10 of them, each one blooming in a place or under conditions that should make flowering impossible. Each one a quiet, extraordinary act of defiance. Flowering plants, the angiosperms, make up roughly 90% of all plant species on Earth. They feed us, shelter wildlife, hold ecosystems together, and regulate the air we breathe. But not all environments welcome them. Extreme heat, extreme cold, total drought, thin oxygen, poisoned soil. Many of these conditions should end a plant before it ever has the chance to flower. The species we are exploring today have solved those problems in ways that plant scientists are still working to fully understand. Some of their adaptations are being studied for use in agriculture, in drought-resistant crops, in medicines. The resilience of these flowers is not just poetic. It may one day help feed the world. 1. The desert that woke up, Cistanthe longoscapa. Pata de Guanaco, Atacama Desert, Chile. A low-growing flowering plant with vivid magenta blooms. Its leaves are small and succulent, designed to conserve every trace of moisture. The plant remains completely dormant as a seed for years, or even decades at a stretch, invisible to the eye and undetectable in the dead desert soil until rainfall triggers germination. Key benefit: its seeds contain compounds that have drawn interest from seed bank researchers and agricultural scientists studying how to extend seed viability under extreme desiccation. Understanding how Cistanthe longoscapa survives such prolonged dormancy could inform drought-resistant crop development in arid regions around the world. Caution: this plant is highly sensitive to soil disturbance and off-road vehicle activity. tourist traffic during bloom events, the Desierto Florido has caused serious damage to bloom zones in recent years. Observing the bloom from designated paths and avoiding trampling is essential to protect the fragile seed banks in the soil. The Atacama Desert is, by most measures, the driest non-polar desert on Earth. Some weather stations in its interior have never recorded a single drop of rain in their entire operational history. The soil in certain regions is so devoid of organic life that NASA has used it to test instruments designed to search for signs of life on Mars. And yet Cystantha longiscapa, a low-growing flowering plant with vivid magenta blooms, has found a way to live here. Its seeds can lie dormant in the Atacama soil for decades, not months, decades. They wait, buried in the dust, through year after year of absolute dryness, metabolically suspended, biding their time with a patience that defies ordinary biology. When an El Niño event brings rare rainfall to the region, something extraordinary happens. Within days, those seeds detect the moisture and germinate simultaneously across enormous stretches of desert. The bloom, called the Desierto Florido, the flowering desert, covers the landscape in dense mats of color. Scientists have recorded blooms so thick that the desert floor becomes effectively invisible beneath them. Then, within weeks, the rains stop, the flowers set seed, and the desert goes quiet again. The seeds settle back into the dust, and the waiting begins once more. 2. The bloom at the top of the world's Susurya obvalata, Brahma Kamal, Himalayas, India, Nepal, Tibet. A stout, perennial alpine herb with a large dome-shaped flower head, encased in layered, papery bracts that are pale yellow and almost translucent. The actual purple florets are hidden within this papery casing. The plant grows slowly in rocky, high-altitude terrain and blooms briefly each summer between July and September. Key benefit. The Brahma Kamal has a long history of use in traditional Himalayan medicine, where extracts are used to treat fever, liver conditions, and as an antiseptic. Modern phytochemical research has identified anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds in the plant. It also holds deep cultural and religious significance, used in temple offerings and festival rituals across the Himalayan region. Caution. The Brahma Kamal is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act of India and is listed as vulnerable due to overharvesting by pilgrims and collectors. Picking the flower is illegal in several Indian states. Visitors to high-altitude areas where it grows should strictly avoid disturbing or removing the plant, as its slow growth rate means recovery from harvesting pressure is extremely slow. At elevations above 4,000 meters in the Himalayan mountain range, the air is thin. The temperatures plunge well below freezing at night, and ultraviolet radiation from the sun is intense enough to damage most living tissue. It is not an environment built for delicate petals. And yet, every summer, in the brief window between snowmelt and the return of frost, Susurya obvalata opens its flowers. The Brahma Kamal, named after the Hindu god of creation, is considered one of the most sacred flowers in the Himalayan tradition. Pilgrims travel for days on foot through high-altitude passes to see it bloom. Temples are decorated with its image. It appears in centuries-old Sanskrit texts. What makes this flower a true marvel is its physical design. The flower head is encased in layers of papery, translucent bracts, pale yellow and almost ghostly in appearance, that function like a greenhouse. They trap heat from sunlight and create a warmer microenvironment around the developing bloom, protecting it from the bitter night air. The Brahma Kamal has essentially built its own climate. At the roof of the world, it blooms on its own terms. 3. The flower that blooms in fire's wake. Epilobium angustifolium. Fireweed. Circumboreal regions, North America, Europe, Asia. A tall, upright perennial herb reaching up to 2 meters in height, with long lance-shaped leaves and dense spikes of bright magenta-pink flowers. It spreads both by seed, which are tiny and wind-dispersed, and by underground rhizomes. In disturbed landscapes, it can colonize bare ground within a single growing season and create dense, visually dramatic stands. Key benefit: fireweed is an ecological pioneer of exceptional value. It fixes nitrogen, improves depleted soil, provides dense nectar for bees and other pollinators, and creates microhabitats that allow other plant species to follow in its wake. The young shoots and leaves are edible and nutritious, and fireweed honey is considered a delicacy in northern Canada and Alaska. In some traditional medicine systems, it has been used for its anti-inflammatory properties. Caution: while native in its circumboreal range, fireweed can become aggressively dominant in disturbed habitats and may slow the return of other native plant diversity if it establishes in very dense stands. It can also cause mild digestive discomfort if consumed in large quantities. People with plant sensitivities should exercise caution around its pollen during peak flowering. In the summer of 1980, Mount St. Helens in Washington state erupted with a force 500 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The blast leveled 230 square miles of forest in minutes. The landscape that remained looked like the surface of the moon. Gray ash, charred trunks, absolute silence. Scientists predicted the area would take a century to recover. Within one growing season, Epilobium angustifolium was already blooming across the blast zone. Fireweed is one of the first plants to colonize ground devastated by fire, volcanic eruption, or any other large-scale destruction. Its seeds are extraordinarily light, equipped with feathery plumes that allow them to drift on air currents for hundreds of kilometers. When they land on bare, mineral-rich soil left behind by fire, they germinate rapidly and bloom in dense, tall spikes of brilliant magenta pink that can cover entire hillsides. Where there was nothing, suddenly there is color. Beyond its visual drama, fireweed plays a critical ecological role. It fixes nitrogen in the soil, creates shade for seedlings of slower-growing plants, and provides nectar for insects returning to a recovering ecosystem. It is not just surviving in devastation. It is rebuilding the world around it, one bloom at a time. 4. The lily that waits beneath the snow. Erythronium grandiflorum, glacier lily, Rocky Mountains, North America. A delicate perennial wildflower growing from a deep underground corm, with 2 broad, mottled green basal leaves and a single nodding yellow flower, whose 6 petals curve sharply backward, giving the bloom an elegant, swept-back appearance. The plant is small, rarely exceeding 30 centimeters in height, and blooms immediately following snowmelt at high elevations. Key benefit: glacier lilies are a keystone species in Rocky Mountain alpine ecosystems. Their early blooming provides the first substantial nectar source for emerging queen bumblebees after winter, which is critical for initiating pollinator colony growth in spring. Their corms are a vital food source for grizzly bears in the early season, and their foliage supports elk and deer. They also have a history of use as food among several indigenous nations in North America, who consumed the corms and seed pods. Caution: the raw corms of Erythronium grandiflorum can cause nausea and vomiting if eaten in significant quantities without proper preparation. The plant is also highly sensitive to trampling and should never be picked in the wild, as each plant takes many years to mature from seed to flowering. Habitat disturbance from off-trail hiking in snowmelt zones puts significant pressure on glacier lily populations. In the high meadows of the Rocky Mountains, spring arrives not gently, but abruptly. One week there is deep snow cover. The next week, as temperatures begin to climb, the snow retreats in patches, and there, sometimes pushing up through the very edge of a melting snowbank, sometimes blooming while patches of ice still surround it on all sides, is the glacier lily. Erythronium grandiflorum produces a single, nodding yellow flower on a slender stem, its petals swept elegantly backward, like the wings of a bird in flight. It blooms so early in the season, sometimes within days of snow clearing, that it often has the meadow entirely to itself. No other flowers have yet dared to open. This timing is not reckless. It is precise. The glacier lily has evolved to bloom exactly when the first queen bumblebees emerge from winter hibernation, hungry and in urgent need of nectar. The lily feeds the bee. The bee pollinates the lily. It is one of the most finely calibrated relationships in North American alpine ecology. Grizzly bears dig up glacier lily bulbs as a crucial early-season food source. Elk graze on their leaves. In the brief, bright window between snowmelt and summer heat, the glacier lily quietly supports an entire food web. 5. The flower that lives on almost nothing. Tillandsia, Ionantha, sky plant, Mexico, Central America, and northern South America. A small, compact epiphytic bromeliad with a tight rosette of narrow, silvery green leaves densely coated in trichomes, the tiny moisture-absorbing scales that give the plant its characteristic fuzzy or silvery appearance. At bloom time, the inner leaves flush dramatically to bright red or deep pink, and a slender purple tubular flower emerges from the center. It has no functional soil roots and attaches to surfaces with small anchor roots only. Key benefit. Tillandsia. Ionantha is one of the most adaptable plants on Earth, capable of growing with minimal water, no soil, and minimal maintenance, making it highly valuable as a low-resource houseplant and in sustainable interior landscaping. It absorbs some airborne pollutants and contributes to humidity in enclosed spaces. In its native habitat, it provides nectar for hummingbirds and supports insect diversity on rocky outcrops and in forest canopies where soil-based plants cannot establish. Caution. While non-toxic to humans, Tillandsia ionantha can be harmful if ingested by cats and dogs, and pet owners should keep it out of reach of animals. In cultivation, it is frequently overwatered by well-meaning owners, which causes root rot and kills the plant. It should be misted or soaked briefly, and then allowed to dry fully. It should never be placed in standing water or sealed glass terrariums without adequate airflow, as trapped moisture causes fatal fungal infections. Most plants need soil. They need roots reaching into the earth to pull up water and nutrients. Everything we intuitively understand about how plants work is built on that assumption. And then there is Tillandsia ionantha, a plant that has abandoned soil entirely. The sky plant is an epiphyte, a plant that grows on other surfaces, clinging to tree branches, telephone wires, cliff sides, and the rusted metal frames of old signs. It has no functional roots for absorbing water or nutrients. Instead, its entire body is covered in tiny specialized structures called trichomes, microscopic scales that capture moisture directly from the air, from fog, from humidity, from the faintest trace of dew. When the sky plant is ready to bloom, something remarkable happens. The leaves at its center flush a vivid, burning red or deep purple, a color change so dramatic it looks like the plant is on fire. Then a slender purple flower emerges from the center. The color change serves as a signal to hummingbirds, its primary pollinators, visible from a distance even without a single petal competing for attention. In an environment with no soil, no standing water, and no guarantee of rain, Tillandsia ionantha has rewritten the rules of what it means to flower. 6. The bloom that cracks through concrete. Buddleja davidi, butterfly bush, China, naturalized worldwide. A fast-growing deciduous shrub reaching up to 5 meters in height, with long arching branches, lance-shaped gray-green leaves with a white felted underside, and long cone-shaped flower spikes in colors ranging from deep purple to lilac, pink, and white. The flowers are intensely fragrant, producing large volumes of nectar throughout summer. It thrives in poor, alkaline, disturbed, or rubble-rich soils where most other shrubs fail. Key benefit: Buddleja davidi produces more nectar per flower than almost any other common garden shrub, making it one of the most significant nectar sources available to butterflies, bees, and other pollinators in urban and disturbed environments. Studies in the United Kingdom have shown that a single large butterfly bush can support more butterfly visits in a day than entire meadow areas of wildflowers. In post-industrial and bomb-damaged urban landscapes, it was historically the first woody plant to return color and ecological function. Caution: Buddleja davidi is classified as an invasive species in several countries, including New Zealand, Australia, parts of the United States, and across much of Europe. Its aggressive self-seeding allows it to spread rapidly along railways, rivers, and into conservation areas, where it can displace native vegetation. Many conservation organizations now recommend replacing garden specimens with sterile cultivars or native nectar-rich alternatives. Before planting, gardeners should check local regulations, as it is restricted or banned in some regions. In the bombed-out ruins of London during and after the Second World War, as rescue workers cleared rubble and civilians rebuilt shattered streets, something unexpected began to appear. Growing from the cracks in broken concrete, from the gaps between bricks, from the ash and dust of destroyed buildings, tall purple flower spikes began to emerge. Entire bomb sites turned violet in summer. People noticed. Some found it eerie. Others found it quietly beautiful. Buddleja davidi, the butterfly bush, had arrived in Britain from its native China decades earlier as a garden ornamental. But it turned out that the plant had a particular affinity for disturbed, alkaline, rubble-rich soil of exactly the kind created by bomb damage. It spread rapidly across the ruins, its seeds light enough to travel on wind across the city, its roots aggressive enough to split weakened masonry. Today, Buddleja davidi grows across the ruins of every major bombed European city, on railway embankments, in derelict lots, on crumbling walls, anywhere that other plants find the ground too poor or too unstable to bother with. In China, it grows naturally on rocky cliff faces and along mountain river valleys. It has simply transferred that talent to a different kind of rock. Its flowers produce nectar so rich and abundant that on a warm summer day, a single large bush can host dozens of butterfly species simultaneously, turning an abandoned lot into a moving tapestry of wings. 7. The orchid that blooms in darkness. Rhizoanthella gardneri, Western underground orchid, Western Australia. One of the most unusual plants ever discovered, this orchid spends its entire life cycle beneath the soil surface. It has no leaves, no chlorophyll, and produces no above-ground structures. The plant consists of a fleshy underground stem bearing a dense cluster of tiny, deep reddish-purple flowers encased in cream-colored bracts. It survives as a full mycoheterotroph, drawing all its nutrients from underground fungal networks. Key benefit: Rhizanthella gardneri is of extraordinary scientific value. Its complete dependence on underground fungal networks makes it a critical study subject for understanding mycoheterotrophy, the process by which some plants exploit fungal connections rather than photosynthesizing. Understanding this process has implications for forest ecosystem science, soil biology research, and conservation biology. Its discovery fundamentally expanded scientific understanding of what a flowering plant could be and where it could survive. Caution: this orchid is critically endangered, with fewer than 50 known populations remaining in Western Australia. It is protected under Australian federal law. Its survival is entirely dependent on the health of the broom, honey myrtle shrubs it parasitizes, and the specific fungal species that connect them. Any agricultural clearing, herbicide use, or soil disturbance in areas where it occurs poses a direct extinction risk. This is a plant so rare and so fragile that even well-intentioned scientific study must be conducted with extreme caution. Every rule about flowers involves light. Flowers need sunlight. Flowers use color and scent to attract pollinators moving through open air. Flowers, almost by definition, exist above ground where the world can find them. Rhizanthella gardneri has decided that none of those rules apply to it. The Western underground orchid is one of the most extraordinary plants ever discovered. It spends its entire life cycle beneath the surface of the soil, never emerging, never seeing sunlight. It produces no chlorophyll. It cannot photosynthesize. Instead, it lives in complete dependency on a network of underground fungi connected to the roots of nearby broom honey myrtle shrubs, siphoning nutrients from that network without contributing anything in return. It is, in botanical terms, a complete parasite, and yet it blooms. Beneath the soil surface, it produces dense clusters of tiny, deep, reddish-purple flowers. The scent of these underground flowers drifts up through cracks in the soil, attracting small insects and possibly fungus gnats that somehow navigate into the earth to pollinate it. The entire reproductive life of this orchid happens in total darkness, underground, in the root zone of a shrub, without a single ray of sunlight ever touching it. It was not discovered until 1928. Fewer than 50 populations are known to exist, and scientists are still not entirely certain how its pollination works. It is perhaps the most mysterious flowering plant on Earth. 8. The poppy that grew on the graves of war. Papaver rhyweus. Common poppy/Flanders. Poppy, Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. A slender annual wildflower with hairy stems, deeply lobed leaves, and large bowl-shaped flowers of vivid scarlet red, each petal bearing a dark basal blotch. The flowers are short-lived individually, but produced in succession through the summer. The plant thrives in disturbed, alkaline, well-drained soil and reproduces entirely by seed, which can remain viable in soil for decades. Key benefit: Papaver rhyweus is one of the most ecologically important wildflowers in European agricultural and disturbed landscapes. Its pollen is highly nutritious for bumblebees and solitary bees, and it serves as a larval food plant for several moth species. In traditional European herbal medicine, preparations from the petals have been used as mild sedatives and for cough and sore throat relief. Culturally, Its significance as a symbol of remembrance for fallen soldiers makes it one of the most emotionally resonant wildflowers in human history. Caution. All parts of Papaver rueus contain alkaloids, including ruidine, which can cause nausea, dizziness, and central nervous system depression if consumed in significant quantities. While far less toxic than the opium poppy, it should not be ingested, particularly by children. In some regions, it is considered an agricultural weed and is targeted with herbicides, which has led to significant population declines in farmed landscapes across Europe. Gardeners and farmers are encouraged to allow it to naturalize in field margins where possible. In the spring of 1915, something unexpected happened across the battlefields of Belgium and northern France. The soil of Flanders, churned and torn by months of artillery bombardment, soaked with rain, mixed with lime from the chalk subsoil thrown up by explosions, had become, inadvertently, ideal ground for a particular flower. And across those devastated fields, between the trenches, on the edges of shell craters, in the mud of no man's land, red poppies bloomed. Papaver rueus, the common poppy, carries seeds that can remain dormant in soil for decades, sometimes longer. Its seeds had been lying undisturbed in the deep Flemish soil for years. The violence of war, the constant churning of the earth, brought those seeds to the surface and into the light. The alkaline conditions created by pulverized chalk gave them exactly the soil chemistry they needed. The poppies bloomed across the battlefields in their millions. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a Canadian physician serving in Flanders, wrote his famous poem, In Flanders Fields, after witnessing those poppies growing over the graves of fallen soldiers. The image became one of the most enduring symbols of remembrance in human history. A flower that bloomed because of destruction. A flower that offered color where there was only ruin. Papaver rueus did not know what it was doing, but what it did perfectly. It bloomed against all odds in the most scarred ground on earth. 9. The flower that blooms. Once in a century, Puya Raimondi, queen of the Andes Mountains, Peru, and Bolivia. The largest bromeliad in the world, with a massive rosette of long, rigid, spine-edged leaves that can span 3 meters across. The plant grows extremely slowly, over 50 to 100 years, storing energy in a dense central core. When it finally blooms, a spectacular tower-like flower stalk rises up to 10 meters above the rosette, covered in thousands of individual white and green flowers. After setting seed, the entire plant dies. Key benefit: Puya Raimondi plays a significant role in its high-altitude Andean ecosystem. Its enormous bloom stalk provides nectar and nesting sites for hummingbirds and a wide range of insects during its single blooming event. The dying plant adds substantial organic matter to the nutrient-poor Puna grassland soil. It is also a critical study subject for understanding monocarpy, the strategy of flowering once and dying, and for research into extreme slow-growth survival strategies in high-altitude plant communities. Caution. Puya Raimondi is classified as endangered, with populations declining due to livestock grazing, agricultural expansion, and illegal burning of Puna grasslands. Its slow growth rate makes recovery from population loss extremely difficult. Sheep and cattle readily eat young plants before they develop their defensive spines, preventing regeneration across large parts of its former range. Conservation of remaining high-altitude grassland habitats in Peru and Bolivia is critical to the survival of this species. Visitors to Andean reserves where it grows should stay on marked paths and keep a safe distance from the spine-edged leaves, which can cause deep lacerations. High in the Andean plateau of Peru and Bolivia, at elevations between 3,800 and 4,800 meters above sea level, where the air is thin and the temperature swings between scorching midday heat and freezing nights within the same 24 hours, there grows a plant unlike anything else on Earth. Puya raimondi is the largest bromeliad in the world. Its rosette of rigid, spine-tipped leaves can reach 3 meters across. It grows with extraordinary slowness, adding almost nothing in size year after year. And it spends between 50 and 100 years doing nothing but growing that rosette, storing energy in its thick core, preparing for a single event. Then, once in its lifetime, it flowers. The bloom stalk rises from the center of the rosette like a tower, climbing up to 10 meters into the thin Andean air, covered in thousands of individual white and green flowers. The plant pours every resource it has ever stored into this one event. Hummingbirds, bees, and insects travel to it from across the surrounding landscape. And then, after weeks of blooming, after setting seed across the high plateau, Puya raimondi dies. The entire life of this plant is a single century of preparation for one final spectacular act. There is nothing else quite like it on Earth. 10. The flower that blooms at the end of the world, Colobanthus quitensis, Antarctic pearlwort, Antarctic peninsula, and sub-Antarctic islands. A tiny cushion-forming perennial plant, rarely more than a few centimeters tall, with dense mats of small, pointed, bright green leaves and small, pale, yellowish-green flowers with 5 petals. Its cells contain antifreeze compounds that prevent ice crystal formation in its tissues, allowing it to survive being frozen solid during winter and resume life during the brief Antarctic summer. It is one of only 2 native flowering plants found on the Antarctic continent. Key benefit: Colobanthus quitensis is of immense scientific importance as a living indicator of climate change. Its population growth, range expansion, and shifting bloom timing on the Antarctic Peninsula, one of the fastest warming regions on Earth, provides scientists with direct biological evidence of climate impacts in real time. The antifreeze compounds in its cells are being studied for potential applications in cryopreservation of biological materials, food technology, and cold climate agriculture. Its ability to photosynthesize at near-freezing temperatures also makes it a subject of interest for researchers exploring plant function at the extremes of viability. Caution: Colobanthus quitensis is protected under the Antarctic Treaty System, and it is illegal to disturb, collect, or damage any Antarctic plant life without specific scientific permits. Visitors to Antarctic research stations and tourist sites on the peninsula must adhere strictly to designated walking routes, as a single footstep on a cushion of pearlwort can destroy decades of growth. The introduction of non-native plant seeds or soil from other regions poses a biosecurity risk to the entire Antarctic flora and must be avoided through careful equipment and clothing cleaning protocols before any Antarctic visit. Antarctica is not a place where flowers grow. It is the coldest, driest, windiest continent on Earth. Its interior is buried under ice sheets miles thick. The temperatures in winter fall below -60 degrees Celsius. Almost nothing lives there, and almost nothing is expected to. But on the Antarctic Peninsula, the finger of land that reaches northward toward South America, conditions are marginally, barely, just enough less severe. And there, clinging to ice-free rock faces and sheltered coastal slopes, one of only 2 flowering plants native to Antarctica, manages not just to survive, but to bloom. Colobanthus quitensis, the Antarctic pearlwort, is a tiny cushion-forming plant, rarely more than a few centimeters tall, with small, pale yellow-green flowers, so modest they are easy to overlook. It spends most of the year frozen solid or buried under snow. During the brief Antarctic summer, when temperatures occasionally climb above freezing for a few weeks, it stirs. Its cells, which contain antifreeze compounds that prevent ice crystals from tearing them apart, begin to function again. And it flowers. In recent decades, as the Antarctic Peninsula has warmed faster than almost anywhere else on the planet, Colobanthus quitensis has begun to spread. Its population has increased significantly. Scientists are watching it carefully because this tiny, overlooked flower is one of the most sensitive living indicators of climate change on Earth. It is not just surviving at the end of the world. It is telling us something about the state of the world itself. And if we are wise enough to listen, a flower smaller than your thumbnail, blooming on the edge of a continent of ice, may be one of the most important things on this planet right now. Every flower in this video bloomed somewhere it had no right to bloom, in deserts that had not seen rain in decades, beneath the surface of the Earth, where no light ever reached, on frozen Antarctic rock, in the ash of volcanoes, on the graves of war. What they share is not fragility. What they share is a kind of fierce, patient, quietly astonishing refusal to accept the conditions they were given. They adapted. They evolved. They waited. And then they bloomed. There is something worth sitting with in that. Life does not always bloom in the easy places. Sometimes the most extraordinary things grow precisely where the conditions seem most impossible. The desert waits for decades and then erupts in color. The mountain shelters its warmth inside its own petals. The continent of ice offers up a flower the size of your thumbnail and tells us everything we need to know about how the world is changing. The next time you see a flower pushing through a crack in the pavement, or blooming on a hillside, still scorched from last summer's fire, remember what you have seen today. That flower knows something. It has always known something. We are only just beginning to understand it. If these flowers have left you with a renewed sense of wonder for the natural world, we would love to hear which one stayed with you the most. Drop it in the comments below, and if you have not subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. We have another video ready for you right now, and we will see you there.